Let's bring in now attorney and legal analyst Andrew Lieb for a bit of a deeper dive. Andrew, thank you for being with us. So we just heard Elizabeth's report there. We know critics are saying this is unconstitutional. Is that a fair argument, particularly since this emergency order only applies to one county within the state?
Nichole, it's a fair statement, it's a fair argument, but it's a terrible conclusion. And why I say it's a terrible conclusion is just a year ago, a little over a year ago, we had a very famous case before the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States. That was called the Braun decision, New York Rifle Association v. Braun. And to remind you, that case was about whether New York could have a default rule that you could not have a gun absent special circumstances. And the court struck that down. They said, that's not a good rule. That's not what the Second Amendment says. But the court made very clear that there's allowed to have restrictions on what's called sensitive places. We're going to call that the sensitive places doctrine. And in the court, it actually said on page 21 that sensitive places are constitutionally protected. So the issue moving forward, Nichole, is not if Albuquerque could have no guns. That would clearly not be allowed. But if you have a restriction of a sensitive place based on violent crimes, based on amount of gun-related emergency visits, and you made it a limited time period, is that a sensitive place? And anyone that's jumping to a conclusion is foregoing the fact that this is unsettled law and we need the Supreme Court to rule. We all just don't know until the Supreme Court tells us, Nichole.
All right, Andrew, that makes sense. And, and the governor herself has already acknowledged that she fully expects this to be challenged in court. As we know, it already is being challenged. Do you think this is more about opening up a dialogue, making the Supreme Court, if that's what it comes to, make some type of decision?
Yeah, I think it's definitely supposed to open a dialogue. And yes, the Supreme Court defining sensitive places will help New Mexico, Texas, New York, Arizona. We need to know what that means, what people are allowed to do. We learned already that all of Manhattan is in a sensitive place, but could it be if it was tied to a specific uptick in crimes and for a limited duration? But I think the big issue here, Nichole, and I have to emphasize this, is everyone's talking about the Second Amendment. And that's not the conversation I think that the Governor Grisham, wanted to have. And what we really need to be talking about is violence occurring, whether we're going to give thoughts and prayers, whether we're going to have more boots on the ground, whether we're going to have more mental health services. Something needs to be done of this crisis of guns and violence throughout our cities and small towns. I have little kids in school today. It's terrifying. So yes, as a constitutional attorney, I want to talk about what the U.S. Supreme Court could do to follow up on Braun. But as a citizen like you and I, we need to be talking about how do we stop the violence? How do we stop the deaths? And that's the question I want to be talking about, Nichole.
But as you know, Andrew, you can't have that conversation without conversations about the Second Amendment coming into play as well. Andrew, I want to talk about the fact that the sheriff has said he's concerned about placing his deputies in the position of trying to enforce this emergency order. And that certainly adds another twist because we could see more incidents result because of this.
It creates a delegitimacy of authority and law when a sheriff does that. At the end of the day, whether you agree or disagree, whether you're a district attorney or you're a sheriff, you have to comport with what the laws are on the books until they're challenged and overturned. As we saw, to take a page out of DeSantis's book, he had two attorneys that didn't agree. They weren't enforcing his law, so he fired them. So I wonder how that's going to happen with people respecting or disrespecting laws. People like the sheriff and other people are saying, hey, the criminals aren't going to follow this law. But that proposition thinks we should just get rid of all laws because criminals don't follow any laws. That's the nature of being a criminal. So at the end of the day, it's a problem. We're debating the constitutionality. We're debating whether the sheriff's going to follow it. We're undermining the legitimacy of government. And now we have a problem that no one's even talking about the underlying problem, Nichole. We have, as you just showed in your package, New Mexico, third highest gun-related. This is a problem. We have to stop this. And I don't have the answer, but I hope the focus could be on that. And let's hope everyone could come in line to protect everyone and the citizens, Nichole.
Yeah, as we know, this certainly is a topic that has no easy answers. Attorney and legal analyst Andrew Lieb, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.